Welcome to the Win, Make, Give podcast. Chad Hyams here on an interview episode, which means sometimes I just don't bring Bob along. And I know Bob would love this topic, yet I know Bob is happy to get out of the way as the word, if you read the title, has biohacking in it. Folks, don't just give up on it. We're not just going to fix your health. I'm not going to be that narrow focused. Don't worry about it because it's biohacking leadership. Now, folks, if you are not checking out all the podcasts that we are bringing you in the Win, Make, Give network for your leadership, for your growth, for your health, please go to winmakegive.com. Check out all the different shows that we have. Yes, this might be the parent show. Yes, this might be the one that's been around for as long as they can be around. Yet we have brought you some other great, powerful shows, which will bring you some amazing growth in every different area of life. Now it's time to just get to what it's all about today, because I want to bring my guest. You know that when I'm flying solo, I always bring a guest. I'm not just going to monologue you. You want monologue? Check out the Achieve Your Apex podcast. That's me just talking to you. Short. Yet this one, we're going to go longer, and we're going to go with an expert. And I am bringing to our call your friend and mine, Scott Hutcheson. Scott, welcome to Win, Make, Give.
Hey, Chad. Great to be here.
Love having you here. I'm really excited about this. Bob, I know we don't record video, so you can't see my camera, right? I got another book, Bob. I know how you love that our guests send me books and don't send you the books. That's okay. I don't know. I can't wait. I was telling you, Scott, I just got it like an hour before the recording. And it's one of the books I've been looking forward to getting. So I look forward to reading it and going through it. Folks, before I even get to Scott, the book's called Biohacking Leadership. I already gave you that. You can get it on Amazon. I'm sure we'll remind you of that as we go. Scott, you sent me this wonderful package about you too. I've got all these pages in front of me. I'm not reading any of it.
You don't need to.
Introduce yourself to our audience. Let them know who Scott is.
All right. So I, am Scott Hutcheson, and I wear a couple of different hats. I'm a professor of engineering and technology leadership at Purdue University, Boiler Up. But then I have also had a foot outside the university for the last 30 years, working with leaders in big companies and startups and in all kinds of settings. So the common thread that runs through both my teaching and my work with leaders is the idea of leadership, team, and organizational performance, and improving that performance the best we can.
Love that. And we've got some entrepreneurs on this call that want to improve their team's performance. And then the people who aren't necessarily in that position, they just want to improve their own personal performance. Because why else would they be listening to the Win, Make, Give podcast, where we talk about health, wealth, leadership, and legacy, if they didn't want to improve themselves? So congratulations to you for making the choice to be here. And we're bringing you Scott to talk about it. Now, Scott, teaching. My mom was a teacher. I have high respect for teachers. I think teachers should be absolutely the highest paid job in our country, because without teachers, we don't have people who grow up to do all the other things and learn all those things. Heck, they're the biggest influence on our kids in their first probably 16 years of their life, spending so much time with them. Before we even get into everything, thank you for being a teacher. Tell us, how did you get into it, and so much that you went all the way to college level to get into education and provide to give back to others like that?
Yeah, it is not where I thought I would end up being, but I actually went to college and studied theater, and I saw myself being an artistic director somewhere at a community theater or a repertory theater, and I was a directing major, so I wanted to direct plays. But on one of my very first gigs directing a play, it was at a community theater where everyone's an amateur, everyone has a day job. And in my cast was this guy, and he happened to be a scientist at this research lab nearby. And he said in one of our conversations over drinks or backstage, I can't remember where, he said, theater is the most collaborative of all the arts. And I think there are lessons from theater that could be applied in my workplace. Hey, would you want to do a workshop or two? I'd love to say that that was a pivotal moment, because I saw an opportunity to contribute to a mission of a research organization. But my big question was, hey, man, does this pay? And he said, yeah, it pays. And I said, then how many of those workshops can we do? He said, let's start with one. So we started with one. And I walked into this training room at this research lab in Tennessee. and we kind of loosely talked about the rules of improv, right? Say yes and your partner look good, and in a way to kind of cultivate a new sort of collaborative leadership practice. And it went really, really well. And that really opened my eyes to potentially a new opportunity. So I increasingly found myself doing that kind of thing, first in corporate training rooms, working with engineers, scientists, technologists, helping them collaborate better and learn how to lead in a collaborative manner. And I said, this is pretty cool. And I decided instead of pursuing theater, I put that on hold for a while. I said, I want to learn more about how organizations function. So I enrolled in a master's program to look at kind of organizational development work. And one thing led to another. And then it's a PhD that led me to Purdue University originally. And so I knew that I wanted to understand leadership, team, and organizational performance better, and thought I'd study it first. Still didn't know I'd have a career in higher ed, but one thing led to another. Being on that college campus, the opportunity came about to take what I was learning into the classroom, and at the same time keep working with leaders off campus too.
Okay, so Scott, I have a theater background as well.
Oh wow, cool.
Yeah. I went to university for it before dropping out because my professor said, if you're not going to teach it, you don't need a degree in it, much to my mother's dismay. I've worked with many directors. I had a wonderful opportunity working in Las Vegas on some shows, things like that. You have the look of a theater director. Let me tell you, folks, I know you're not seeing Scott on this. He's got the beard that looks like the theater director with just the white, the hair thinning, right? You've got the theater director look that's pulled out your hair while you've aged with wisdom. So
who knows? Maybe I'll go back to that as my encore performance before.
There you go.
Retire.
Okay. So and again, thank you for teaching and helping shape the future people that are out there, much less the work you've done with some amazing organizations. Your book is called Biohacking Leadership. Now, I love the title. These are two words that I have not seen together before. So let's break them apart first.
Sure.
Everybody who's listening to Win, Make, Give, everybody, I can say, they understand what leadership means to them and what leadership means in general. Biohacking is one of those hot topic terms that some people understand and some people don't. So let's just take the leadership out of it at first.
Sure.
Explain what biohacking is. How did that become a part of your world, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah. So really, biohacking, as most people know it, kind of came onto my radar screen about 5 years ago when I got a diagnosis of diabetes. It was in the family. It was probably a matter of when, not if, as my A1C would go up a little bit every year. My annual physical. The doctor said, "Hey, may want to make some changes." Well, I didn't. I put it off, and then 5 years ago, I had the diagnosis, and my A1C was alarmingly high. And I got a kind of later in life, 55 or so. So I said, "Man, this is serious stuff. I want to understand the biology behind the disease and how I can use both technology and behavioral tweaks to see if I can make some adjustments and see results."
And folks, that's biohacking right there.
Right. So I've got a continuous glucose monitor. I've made full use of a smartwatch. And with that data, I began to say, all right, we all know that what you eat will affect your blood sugar, but the science also says the quality of your rest, how much exercise you get, how you're managing stress, those are all big factors. So I really began to experiment. On the end of one, just me, but I got instant feedback with the continuous glucose monitor and what I was seeing on my stats. And I also opted for kind of advanced diagnostics, like my doctors. Of course, they do the lipid panel and all of that. But I said, I want to understand inflammation in my body, so other diagnostics. And I'm happy to say that I'm in diabetes remission. I completely changed the way I ate, the way I moved, how I managed stress. And so that was kind of my entree into kind of biohacking. And so understanding the science and understanding how your behavior can be tweaked to improve in my case, the performance of my body on how it processes insulin. So parallel to that was my work in leadership. And I'm happy to tell you how I said, these two things are not too dissimilar, actually.
Okay, so keep going with that, right, folks? First of all, before he does, I just want you to hear what he said, right? He's in diabetes remission, with whatever the right term would be for it. And that's not necessarily having to run out and go get this shot that everybody is getting, right? This is biohacking. You can fix your body without getting on some prescription that you're going to be committed to the rest of your life. That is what biohacking is looking at. That's not what we're going to talk about today. We're not going to get into how to cure you of all the diseases that you have through the right things. Yet there are paths available to you that don't require just saying, let me take another pill for the rest of my life or get a shot. Thank you for being clear on that, especially with one like diabetes, which is so common. And so many people just think once you have it, you have it. Now you have to learn to live with it. Yes, you have to learn to live with it, yet you have put it into remission through your biohacking. Okay, so you're also doing leadership stuff at the same time.
Right.
And at some point, a light bulb goes on that says, aha, these go together.
Exactly. So I've always taken kind of a behavioral approach to leadership. You can say you're a leader, you can be a great strategic thinker, but it is your behavior, it is with your behavior that you lead. So we as every human being, we send these behavioral signals that others pick up on pretty easily.
Sure.
And so that behavioral approach to leadership, I said, well, all along I've been teaching leaders to tweak their behavior to try to get the impact that they're looking for. And it was just kind of in this moment of well, what about this notion of biohacking leadership, biohacking teams, and biohacking organizations? And I already had a relationship with the publisher, Wiley. Had written a book a few years ago for them. And just while I was mulling through all that, my publisher called and said, hey, are you working on anything new? I said, I kind of am. What do you think about this? Biohacking leadership, biohacking teams, biohacking organizations, a 3-book series. And she said, let's sign for all 3. So that's how that happened. It was just kind of, in Ghostbusters, you don't want the streams to cross. But in this case, it was good that these 2 streams, what was going on in my personal life, what was going on in my professional life, and then this sort of light bulb moment.
So are you telling us right here that book 2 and book 3 are still to come?
They are, yeah. My manuscript for book 2 on teams is due in December, and then book 3 on organizations a year from December. So I'm a busy guy, promoting one book and writing 2 others, and still, teaching.
There you go. That is keeping your hands full. All right. So again, I got the book, Biohacking Leadership, Leveraging the Biology of Behavior to Maximize Your Impact. Folks, available on Amazon, easiest place. Yes, you can go to Scott's website, scotthutcheson.com, and find it there. Yet Amazon's the easiest place. He knows it. We all know it. That's where you're going to probably end up going to check it out. Scott, I haven't had a chance to flip through it yet.
Right.
If I opened to just one section and only read one section or chapter of the whole book, what's the key thing I'm going to find in this book that I have to make sure I read because it's going to make the biggest impact on biohacking my leadership?
Yeah. If you go to, I think it's chapter 3, and the chapter title is From Executive Presence to Leadership Biodynamics. And that really is the key message to not only this book, but a lot of the work that I'm currently doing. So,
just so you know, that sounds like a professor's chapter title.
Yeah, sorry. It's a little long.
Sounds like a syllabus. We got some class on that or whatever it's going to be. All right. So let's dive into this a little bit. Teach our audience a little bit more about chapter 3, as you were talking about.
Yeah. So your listeners might be familiar with this term called executive presence. It's been floating around in leadership circles since about the 70s, but it was always about like natural charisma and dress for success, and this is what a leader looks like. But it really wasn't ever kind of scientific. It wasn't well researched. I had a client that was interested in some executive presence training. And I said, we can do that, but I want to take a very scientific approach to it. I mean, I'm a university professor, right? Got graduate students doing research around leadership. So I said, let's break down those 2 terms, executive presence. Well, executive doesn't just mean a title or a position within an organization. It really refers to the executive functions of the brain, those functions of the brain that come online in late adolescence. Hey, I've got young adult sons. They're just starting to exercise their executive function, think long term, do complex problem solving, able to understand that context matters, right? Those are the high level of strategic thinking that we expect from our leaders. So that's what executive and executive presence mean. But presence means presence becomes important because nobody can see how you think. Nobody knows what's in your head. So they only experience your leadership through your behavior, through your very presence.
Okay.
So then I organized a research project that said, all right, well, what are the interpersonal signals that when other people see, they say, that's a leader right there. That's a potential leader. If I'm in the chair hiring, a new team lead, or if I'm getting ready to pull the lever in the voting booth, I think that's the person I want representing me in Washington or at the city hall or wherever. So we began looking for what are those behaviors, and we zeroed in on 18 key behaviors, these behavioral signals that when someone starts checking those off, even subconsciously, they say, that's a leader. And in the absence of them, they're saying, I don't think that's a leader. So
Okay.
I call these biomarkers. These are behavioral biomarkers. And they aren't just random. They fall into three categories that I call biodynamic channels. So that's why I say from executive presence to leadership biodynamics. And those channels are think of them as a mixing board with three mixing bars, right? The first one is warmth, right? We want to follow leaders who are warm. We feel safe around them. We feel an instant connection. But that's not enough, right? I have lots of relatives that I think are warm. I love them to death, but I'm not going to listen to them about career advice or who to vote for,
Yep.
But we need something else. We need competence. And that's the second channel. We need people who have something to offer of value, their subject matter, their experience. They bring something to the table, something that's of value to those that they want to lead. And then the third is gravitas. And I define gravitas a little bit differently. It's not just seriousness and weightiness. I take a planetary kind of definition of it. I mean, it comes from gravity, right? Before Isaac Newton called that phenomenon gravity, he was borrowing from the Greeks who used the word gravitas to describe people. So gravity, if you think about it, we've got one moon, and our gravity keeps that moon in our orbit. So gravitas in a person means I can bring people together to create something of shared value, right? So I'm not sucking them in, I'm pulling them in, I'm moving their momentum in alignment with mine in alignment with theirs, and together we can do something amazing. So
I love that definition. If I can just, right? That's a great, and what a great analogy, right? Of pulling in that moon and then being able to kind of keep it there and rotating with us. So it's not us, yet it's staying in our orbit and stuff. And yes, I guess I haven't been to other planets, but they have multiple moons.
Exactly. Right.
So,
and it's symbiotic. If the moon didn't pull on us a little bit, well, we wouldn't have tides, and we wouldn't have been able to evolve as humans. So I like that analogy, and I'm glad you do too. So what we have determined is that these are trainable. So if you have these 18 biomarkers, you can evaluate yourself on them. And we've developed diagnostics instruments. You can evaluate yourself. You can have others evaluate you, right? You may think you're projecting warmth in these particular ways, or you may think you're coming across competent, but those around you might tell a different story. So in my practice, we also have these diagnostic tools. But regardless of the diagnostic tools, that's how we've organized the book. That's one chapter that explains the model. And then the rest of the book breaks it down. So there's a chapter on warmth, there's a chapter on competence, there's a chapter on gravitas. And then we wrap it up with the neuroscience of three really important tools: neuroscience of storytelling, the neuroscience of conversation, and one I'm really excited about is the neuroscience of play. One of my PhD students is doing his dissertation research on the role plays, if you will, in organizational culture. So we look at those from an evolutionary and a neuroscience perspective, why they're so important.
Okay, so I got the 3. I love the almost the equalizer, right? We've all seen an equalizer or a soundboard. Usually they're really big folks, but this one's just a 3-channel board, right? It's the one you get in high school when they don't have the budget for it. And we're all going to have those knobs at different levels, is what you're saying. I mean, some people might have them all at 0 and they really have nothing. But as soon as you get some warmth, you're going to tick your way up. And obviously the best leaders, I'm guessing, are all channels full up. Let's help our audience.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
So we want our leaders to know when to borrow a line from Spinal Tap, when to turn it up to 11.
11.
Right?
Yep.
But they don't always need to be at 11. So the reason we use that metaphor of sometimes you need to dial one back. Right?
Okay.
When you need to make room for others' competence to shine through, if you will, you might need to dial yours down a little bit.
It's an interesting concept to add into there. Okay. So sometimes we do want, right? The room's a little echoey. We need to pull this back a little or whatever it is for that soundboard thing. Okay. So gravitas, I get, love it, right? Competence, I get, love it. Warmth, I don't get that one, right? The audience will know. They'll be like, yeah, Chad, you're warm. 0. Okay. So give me a biohack. You said within those 3 categories, there's other markers that are in there. I'm going to say, let's pick on warmth for a minute, Scott. Biohack me to become a little bit warmer so I can move that up in my biohacking of my leadership.
Well, Chad, my guess is that you are probably warmer than you think you are.
I am, but I play that I'm not.
Yeah, that's right. If you have had any sustainable relationships, personally or professionally, you've got some warmth to you, right?
Okay, good.
But let's pick on one, right? So first, let me outline the 6 biomarkers under warmth. Some of them are going to sound obvious, maybe others not so much. So listens well to others, right? Listens well to others, connects with people on a personal level, validates others, is other-oriented, right? Oriented toward others, is approachable and relatable, and is thoughtful, right? Okay. So those are the 6 biomarkers. And when we begin to see, oh yeah, Chad is all 6 of those things, I want to spend more time with Chad. Right. I'm comfortable being in Chad's orbit, or I'm comfortable him kind of pulling me into his orbit. Right? So it sets us up for what comes next. We get to share our expertise with one another, and we decide on a shared value next step. Okay. So, listening.
I don't validate people as much as I should. I just expect them all to be really good. Just off that list, I'm just going to grab that quickly. I believe I'm others focused. I believe I listen. I connect with people, yet I don't always validate them well. Hack me.
That's right. Well, how might you validate others? I'd like for you to think about a time when someone you held in a leadership position, a boss, or just someone that you respected, or maybe a mentor, how they validated you, how they said, Chad, you are really good at this. Or Chad, I appreciate the job you did on this particular project. Can you think of a time where you experienced that?
I absolutely can. There were our boss, because my brain's focused on him while we're here, our boss, Ben, our audience obviously knows of or knows Ben. Ben used to, when I was training live events on Ben's content, he used to tell people, Chad trains it better than I do, right? And he would tell me, man, you teach my stuff better than I, and that would validate for me in all of that, feeling that, okay, I'm validated.
Yeah. And I bet what was going on in your body, and when we get deeper into this biohacking, we look at neurochemicals. My guess is when that occurs for you, if we could take a spit sample, we would find oxytocin is high in your system.
Right. Makes sense.
And that is one of the main signals of warmth. It's the bonding hormone, right? So knowing how important that was to you should motivate you to do that for others. And I bet you do it too. And so, validating others simply means validating others. And it can be done in private. It can be done publicly. I remember the first time kind of in a boardroom, somebody of authority said, I just want to acknowledge the great job Scott did at 25 years old, on this PowerPoint presentation. Not a big deal, but it really validated me. And I felt a bond to that particular leader. And when I saw consistent signals of that, or consistent signals of them validating others, you want to see a good sign of leadership, go out to dinner with them and see how they how they treat the wait staff.
That is what a great, I love that you said that. Nothing shows me who someone is more than how they'll treat the servers at a restaurant that they go to. I believe everybody should have to be a server for 1 year in their life, right? Everyone should have to serve in the military for at least a year. Everyone should have to be a server for at least a year. We would all be so much more compassionate with all these things that we should have to do at some point in our life. That's a great way to find out how someone treats other people who, quote unquote, don't matter to them in that regard.
Yeah. So when I'm working with a leader and, if like you, they said, I think warmth is more difficult for me. And actually my journey, warmth came later. I'm not a warm guy. My wife used to call me Spock early in our marriage. I feel things deeply inside. I just don't let those feelings show.
Sure.
It's like, I think it was Homer Simpson who told Bart to keep those feelings stuffed way down deep inside.
That's right. Well, and I tell people I don't mean to hurt your feelings because I don't have any, so I just don't understand it, right? We all have our ways of covering with our little jokes about not having emotions.
That's right. So, but validating others is one of those simple things you can start to do. So, in our trainings, we'll look at 3 or 4 kind of evidence-based practices that result in really good validation. What's kind of a 3-step way you can validate someone? First, acknowledge the job that they did. Recognize recognize they're an actual human being. It's not just the job they did, but the person that they are. And then decide whether that should be private or whether that should be public. Right? I do that a lot on LinkedIn. Right? I do that for my students. I'll have a student who's graduating, getting ready to look for a job, and say, "Hey, can you help me? Network a little bit?" So I'll say, "Tell you what, I will share your profile on LinkedIn with my 7,000 or so network, and I always say something positive about them. Something I have noticed that they do in the classroom that I think will be beneficial to potential employers, and that's a small way to validate someone."
Great way, right? Yeah. Great way, folks. Validate is just one of the 18 biomarkers that we're talking about in our leadership biohacking opportunity here. Think about getting a copy of the book, yet think about how can you check and move up just one on that little scale by being able to acknowledge yet again another one.
Can I share another example? So, another one in that category is listens well to others. So one of the things I do in the book, so there's a section on listening well. Sure. And for each of these sections, I pick an actual leader. Sometimes one from history, sometimes current day. I've even picked a couple of fictional leaders who was known to do that. So in that particular section, it's listen like Lincoln. So listen like Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln once said, "When I meet a man and I don't like him very much, I think I need to get to know him better." And then he talks about one of his war generals who in public called him a long-armed ape. The general called Lincoln a long-armed ape, and Lincoln did not like this guy. So he said, "I'm going to spend more time with him. I'm going to try to understand how he does what he does." And they formed a very close strategic relationship as a result. So just taking time, getting to know someone, listening to their story. If your first thought is, "I don't like that person very much," you probably just need to spend a little bit more time with them to find something that you can appreciate about them.
Dang. Dang, I've got to do that now better. All right, fine. Usually I say, "I just don't like that person," and then I just walk the other way. I will work on that as well, as I know about half our audience also agreed with me on that dang sentence. I want to look at it the other way. Sure. Okay, so I want to look at what most leaders, where's the biggest failure you have seen in leadership? Because I think that leads most of us to be able to learn from failure. Our audience is very much a we don't fail, we learn from experiences type people. What's the biggest failure you see in leadership that if you had the magic wand, you would resolve to help everybody be better at it?
I think for me, it would be to understand that leadership is developmental. You learn to be a good leader by leading. by making mistakes, by understanding, gosh, that didn't work out the way I thought it would. What can I try differently? So I think it's experimental. Every interaction you have with your team is an opportunity to experiment. And how do you experiment? Well, you learn to lead just the way we learn anything else. We watch other people. You and I both learned to talk because we had a mom or dad, an older sibling that talked to us from day one, and even in vitro. Right. So,
or Grover and Big Bird.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. Those guys. Right. So we learn something first by imitating and then kind of making it our own. So many of us have picked and chosen little attributes, little ways of presenting oneself from other leaders. We've tried those on. Some have worked. Some said, that's not for me. And even those that work, we've eventually kind of experimented with and made it our own. So I think the leader's biggest mistakes is to not recognize that leadership is a process that we learn, and we learn it over a lifetime. And every interaction with those we lead, or even with our clients, is an opportunity to experiment, gather data, say, am I getting the signals back that I'm expecting? Right? Subtle head nods, like I just got a head nod from you.
Yes,
right?
You did. Yes.
I think that means you're tracking, right? So, so that leadership is something we can learn by experimentation.
Okay, that triggers this question, and I'm actually talking to an expert, right? I'm not talking to somebody who just wrote a book because. I'm not talking to someone who claims. I'm actually talking to a PhD when it comes to this topic. Is leadership, are we born leaders or are we grown into leaders? Are there people who are just not suited to be leaders and some who are? Talk about hereditary, environment, all that when it comes to leadership.
Yeah, even if you think about these 18 biomarkers, we are probably, each of us is genetically predispositioned to do some of these things well. Right, something about our brain helps us learn fast. So we build competence and expertise very, very quickly. I work with lots of scientists and engineers. Man, they're off the chart on competence, but not everyone can be a scientist or engineer, right? But they have a different area of competence. So I think that some of these things we're born with, others are developmental. But I'm also glad that we have more models of what effective leadership can look like today than we did even a decade ago. Leadership for a long time, we thought it was kind of almost always male. I'm only 5'6", and there was a time where we said leaders had to be tall. I hated to hear that, right? But you looked at it and you saw most CEOs, most presidents were 6-footers. No, that's bad news for a guy who's 5'6". So there are some kind of genetic advantages, I think, that you might be born with, but everyone can learn to lead.
Okay, so I'm not that person who comes up in the world has always been they can still learn to lead and should not limit themselves and say, no, I'm a worker bee and I'm always going to be a worker bee. They can become that queen bee in an organization, in their department, in their home life, in whatever it is. They might just have to do a little bit more hacking, yet they absolutely can get there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And some of us will be born with maybe an easier path because we're already hacked out on some of those things at a high level. For us, we're not looking at it like, I'm not prepositioned to have diabetes, so I'm not going to have to worry about that and my stuff like that.
Right. Yep.
Okay. All right. So folks, we've been talking to Scott Hutcheson, an expert, as you can hear him, and author of Biohacking Leadership, Leveraging the Biology of Behavior to Maximize Your Impact. Available to you on Amazon. And it's only book one of the 3-book series we know is coming year after year now to be able to biohack more and more. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. Scott, as we come to the end of this, I'm going to ask you one more question. Yet before I ask you that question, if they want to connect to you, anybody in our audience says, I want to talk to Scott more, I want to follow more about Scott. You said you're on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
What's the best way for our audience to connect with you after this episode ends?
Sure. Probably the easiest way to find me is my website, and that's scotthutcheson.com, SCOTTHUTCHESON.com. You can also just search for me on Google, and I'm usually the first Scott Hutcheson that comes up, and you can find lots of ways to connect with me there.
And if you didn't catch the spelling of his name, right, it's not Hutchin. There's no N in there, right? Hutcheson. It's also, of course, in the show notes where you'll see him there so you can connect with Scott. Okay, Scott, last question. It might be something you've already talked about and you want to reiterate it with the audience. It might be something I haven't even asked you about that's sitting on your heart that you want to share right now. Give me the 60-second end to this episode. What is it they should hear as they end listening this time?
Yeah, let me mention again the topic of one of those last chapters in the book, the neuroscience of conversation. So I love this quote that the conversation is the smallest unit of change. And conversations, it's our oldest technology. It's the way in which we transfer information, build relationships. So we offer lots of guidance on how to have great conversations. Conversations that strengthen relationships, conversations that push others beyond where they think they can go, but result in growth, right? So that's something I have had to learn later in my career. I'm much more comfortable in a classroom of 600 people than I am one-on-one with someone. So I've had to learn kind of biohack conversation, and I think I'm much better at it than I used to be. But I think it's a superpower when it comes to leadership, how to have great conversations.
So even that person that's over in the corner that doesn't want to talk, they can biohack conversation skills and be able to get better and better and better at having those conversations. And those who think they're amazing, I can talk to everybody about anything. There are still ways they can biohack their conversation skills.
Absolutely. Might get you more dates too.
Hey, there you go. I don't need one, thankfully.
Yeah.
My wife is in the, I don't want any more dates. Yet audience, maybe it'll get you some more dates for those of you who are looking for that as well. Who knew you could come to the Win, Make, Give podcast and also get dating advice? So there you go. Now you've got it. Scott, we really appreciate you taking the time, joining us today. Looking forward to getting this episode out. I'm now looking forward to getting to that last chapter of the book. See how I can biohack conversations a little bit. We appreciate you joining us here. Folks, just like always, we hope you're already subscribed so you don't miss the next episode. We hope you're sharing this episode with somebody, maybe your leader, who could biohack and be just that little bit better of a leader for you. Share this episode with them. Let them hear us talk about it so it's not you talking about it to them. And until our next episode, as always, do good.